Well, Robbie, we made it only 0 episodes into season 2 before we had to record an emergency insert. We had already recorded our entire season 2 preview. That's coming up after this, so don't fret. That is already in the can, but some big news dropped yesterday as we're recording this, and we thought we have to record a little emergency insert for the Broom Brothers, fans and Frans. I mean, I guess if your name is Fran, we appreciate you and thank you so much for listening. But Brad Gushue announcing that this will be his final year of competitive curling, and it could be a storybook ending. We know the Briar is in St. John's this year, where he is from and has made his name as a curler and, quite frankly, a huge celebrity in Newfoundland. So yeah, he's decided to hang him up. Robbie, your initial thoughts when you saw the news yesterday?
I was in awe. First of all, I think it's just a massive event in the game. Brad Gushue retiring. We all knew the day was coming, but I think I can't say I was surprised when they announced the Briar in St. John's. It was kind of the perfect ending to this story that's been going on for so long. I think it's going to be a big challenge for the sport of curling. Like you mentioned it, a celebrity, like that's an understatement in Canada. His popularity is just second to none, really, everywhere we go. It doesn't matter if we're in another team's home building. I've been the MC for a couple of years. I hear the applause for every team, and his is certainly the loudest pretty much everywhere we go. And I think the question about who's the greatest of all time is something that will always be debated. People will go back, well, this person could sweep, this person could throw heat or, hit weight, this person could draw so good. But I think it's pretty hard to argue the debate that no one has left the impression on the game that Brad Gushue has in so many different ways.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's definitely amongst those GOAT candidates, Kevin Martin, of course, in the conversation, Nicholas Sedin, Glenn Howard. I mean, Bruce Mowat is, he's only 30, so we can't say it right now, but is on a trajectory where he could potentially be in that conversation as well. But yeah, you're right. As far as having fans, I would say, you've seen it firsthand. No one travels like Brad Gushue. If he's playing in Canada, he's the home team. His team is the home team. And it's obviously that's accentuated in the Maritimes and Atlantic Canada, and accentuated even more when he's at home in Newfoundland and Labrador, like we saw at the Slam last year in St. John's. But yeah, he definitely has captured the imagination of Canadian curling fans. I think for good reason. I think he is a guy that curling fans sort of see as the kind of ideal curler in their mind, right? He's a gentleman on the ice. He conducts himself super well with the fans, so gracious with his time. I know you and I have seen the number of autographs he signs after games, and he's been doing that for literally decades. He's worked to put himself in that position. And as you said, I think the shockwaves will be felt throughout the sport when he finally steps away at the end of this season.
100%. And I also just got to laugh because you and I were texting last night. I was on stage when this video came out, so I had no idea. I got off and my phone was like, 68 X notifications, 14, what is going on? So I checked it. And it's mind-blowing, but I'm not surprised. A funny story just to elaborate on that was 2 seasons ago, we had the Tour Challenge in, I believe it was Niagara Falls, Ontario. And that's the one where all the photographers come in. They take the photos, the headshots of every team. They do the pre-game videos that the team walks out to. All this sort of media stuff for the season ahead. And my friend Pierce had just started working for the Grand Slams, and he'd never curled. He knew nothing about curling. He's just there as a musician to organize things like après curl, provide entertainment. And anyway, I was just kind of showing him the ropes, and we're in the lobby and the room where they were all getting their photos taken. We're just off the side, and there was a door, and there was no less than 200 people literally just jumping up and down to look in one of those kind of rectangular windows on a door. And I mean, with excitement, and Pierce just looks at me and he goes, "What is happening?" And I just kind of looked over and I said, "Oh, Brad Gushue's getting his pictures taken." And I think that just says it all. And what I loved about Brad is he took time and he signed so many autographs, but he was so smart in the way, not smart, but he was just so strategic in the way that he conducted himself. You didn't see Brad at every social event. You didn't see Brad at, everywhere you looked. But so he was smart to take care of himself mentally, because that's so important especially when you live so far east. Your travel time, like the European teams, there's just a lot more of it. So you need to take care of yourself when you're on the road. So it's not like you saw him all the time, but when you did, he was 100% dialed in. He was 100% committed to his fans and truly, genuinely appreciated the support that they gave to him, and he gave them the respect back. And that is certainly something that Brad Gushue will get a lot of respect for in the years to come.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I also will say, I do like the timing of it, and I tweeted this yesterday. I think this was a decision, and I hope I'm not, telling tales that Brad would not want me to tell, but in Nashville last year at the All-Star game, I was having a conversation with him and Brad Jacobs actually for quite a while, and the subject of his potential end date came up, and Brad Jacobs had kind of said, yeah, I think I'm going to go for another quad. And that was something Brad reiterated on our show earlier this summer. And Brad Gushue kind of said, yeah, I'm not too sure. And I do think this was something he kind of came to over the summer. This wasn't necessarily something he had said to himself a couple years ago, well, this quad will be the end of everything. And, I think it was still up in the air for him. And then obviously you get some time away from the game. We know he's had some injuries over the course of the year. He's had problems with his hip for years. Last year, he had a glute injury that was preventing him from playing his best. We saw that affect him at the Brier, and it was still affecting him in Nashville at the All-Star game as well. But I do like the timing of it. I think sports is so rarely do you get a chance to walk away on your own terms. It's, it's often said like a sport retires you. You don't get to retire from the sport. Mm-hmm. And for Brad, he's still, he's still in the top 10. He was number one as recently as last year, made the Brier semifinals last year, of course, won the Brier just a year ago, went to the last Olympics. I think he's still definitely a favorite to go to the Olympics here in 2026. He's got the hometown Brier. He's going to be going out on top, or at least as close to on top as you can go out in a sport where, he could have hung around for another year or two. And who knows, I think Brendan Botcher was probably going to leave at the end of this season no matter what and get back to skipping. So who knows what his team might have looked like. He himself, maybe his heart wasn't as in it anymore. And then you end on a couple years where, maybe you just didn't have it anymore. And so for me, I really love the timing of it as well. It's so hard to step away from something you've done for so long. And I totally get that. But it really feels like the right time, especially with the potential for the fairy tale ending at the Brier in St. John's. I just think it's all lined up perfectly for him. I do think it's the right time. And I commend him for being able to do it on his own terms, because that happens so rarely in sports.
Oh, 100%. And like you said, he was nearly at his best. And the other thing you should talk about in terms of when you said that, how injured he was, he's had quite a few injuries throughout the last quadrennial. Brad Gushue is known for his practice. Like, I think for a lot of players who have curled for as long as he has at the level he has, that's one thing. But I don't think many, I'm not saying all of them, but I don't think many of them have probably thrown the amount of rocks that Brad Gushue has over that time span. He's 100% committed. And I applaud him too, because it's, I don't want to get into any kind of financials here. I don't know. I don't want to know. It's none of my business. But, a Canadian icon like Brad Gushue, you got to think the sponsorship is high, the opportunities, which I'm sure not many of those would go away in terms of things like speaking engagements and that sort of thing. But, it would probably be easy for him to kick around, maybe play a lighter schedule for 4 years and still kind of have his name, get that TV exposure sort of thing. But, he chose to hang it up. And I think that just shows maybe that the sport means so much to him that he doesn't want to, and this is definitely the wrong word, but perhaps he doesn't want to show any disrespect to the sport that has given him so much. And as if he's kind of using it for any kind of personal benefit. So, the thing I always notice about Brad as well is when I would interview him, it took me a few times to know this, but we would do pre-recorded pre-game interviews for the finals on the broadcast, which were done about an hour before we went to air. And it was pretty simple to tell that he was in game mode. It was go time. This was not chit chat time. And I mean that out of a place of respect. And it just shows how much the game means to him, how much playing at the top level means to him. I know how much this decision has probably weighed on him for so many months now, or perhaps even years. But, good for him. And I have a lot of personal respect for him for doing what you had mentioned is going out on top.
So there you have it, Brad Gushue announcing his retirement. It's obviously a storyline we'll be following all season long as curling fans. And here on the Broom Brothers does put some key dates on the calendar. His final slam will be the Players' Championship in Steinbeck, Manitoba in January. Potentially his final tournament will be the Brier in St. John's in late February, early March. Of course, if he wins the Brier, then his final tournament would be the Worlds. So lots to look forward to this season. But big news from the curling world. Brad Gushue retiring from curling. And now for all the other big news that we had already recorded, here is the rest of our season preview. Hello, curling fans, and welcome back to the Broom Brothers. It's officially now season 2 of the official podcast of the curling group and the Grand Slam of Curling. John Cullen with you, as I have been all summer, but re-emerging from his now 2-child life, his 3 weeks at the Canada Winter Games. My main man, my partner in crime, Robbie Doherty, is back. And,
that's right.
Robbie, it's great to see you, man.
John, it's great to see you too, my friend. I'm going to tell something right off the bat. 2 children is very challenging. So appreciation to all the parents out there, and especially to the curlers who travel the world all winter with 2 kids. It's mind blowing. So yeah, it's certainly been a busy summer, but you know what? You've been killing it, man. I've been listening, paying attention. So a big thank you to you. Your back must be sore from carrying the show for the past 2 months, but I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. No, it's been good. And I know summer's also your busy season for work with your music and everything. So I mean, I was just sitting around doing nothing. So I figured why not call some of the Rock League captains while I'm just, chilling out with my 0 kid lifestyle. And,
if there's one thing I know about John Cullen, he's not sitting around doing nothing. So I don't believe that for a second. So.
Well,
how was your summer, buddy?
It was good. It honestly was very chill. It was a very, very chill summer for me. Obviously, we had a super busy year last year with the slams, and my April in particular was crazy. I recorded my first ever comedy special. Then we went right to a slam. Then we went to Nashville for the All-Star game. Then I did the Winnipeg Comedy Festival. So I had, a couple weeks of doing shows to prepare for that. So it was really like maybe the busiest 6 weeks of my life. Then I was also finishing my book in that time. And so once May kind of ended, I felt like I needed 3 months mostly off. So yeah, we just kind of stuck around Calgary. We went to Iceland, me and Becca, for a little bit, which was really nice. Beautiful country. If you've never been, you got to go, especially you're close. It's not that
right
far
around the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
I hear it's very green.
Yeah, very green, very beautiful. And it's just the changing landscape. You drive an hour and it feels like you're in a totally different country. You go from like volcanic desert to lush forest to glacier lagoon style. It was wild. We had an awesome time. But yeah, mostly just chilled out, recorded this podcast, getting ready for a very busy Grand Slam of Curling year. And with that, an exciting announcement about the Broom Brothers in general. We are switching to weekly this year. So last year we were bi-weekly every couple of weeks. Sometimes we were even every 3 weeks, depending on if we had a busy schedule or stuff going on. So there will be some weeks we miss here and there, but for the most part, the plan is to record the podcast weekly. It'll be 1 week, Robbie and I sitting down talking about the curling news of the day and maybe, how his kids are doing and things like that. And then the next week will be an interview with a player. So it'll be every week from now moving forward. So make sure you subscribe on your podcast app, follow us, subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss any episodes of the show. But we are thrilled to be with you every week for this upcoming season, which is going to be a big one. It's an Olympic year. Rock League is launching in the new year. But Robbie, let's start with what's sort of the biggest story on the curling calendar right now. We're going to go over everything that happened this summer, which was super busy. But this is really fresh in people's minds. Lots of people online are talking about it. But it was just announced by the Grand Slams this week. Jared Allen, who we know elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame this year, was a longtime player in the NFL, 5-time Pro Bowler, and also a curler for the last decade or so. He's played in a few U.S. national curling championships, played in a lot of events on the World Curling Tour. He and John Morris are teaming up in Lake Tahoe and putting a team together. What is your initial reaction to that news?
I think it's unbelievable. It's doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what this is going to do for the game. Curling, I think it's so funny because we've seen it on display for so many years. We talk about how many views it gets at the Olympics, how popular it is worldwide, but for some reason, we still get so many old cliches in terms of comments, jokes around the sport. And how often do you still hear jokes about the skips not being able to sweep? And then you look at the skip and it's Brad Jacobs. Like, he can sweep, trust me, much better than you. not you, but whoever made that comment. Like,
no, he can speak better than me too.
Yeah. My point is, though, is it just brings such a fresh look to the sport in general. Jared Allen, a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Like, this guy has been around the block, played in the NFL, a Hall of Fame career, looked up to and seen as literally an elite athlete worldwide in any sport. He's literally in the Hall of Fame at the top level. He's going to bring so many eyes to the game. I can't tell you how many times, I've told my non-curling friends, I'm just making this up, but Jacobs is playing Gushu in the Brier final. And they're like, oh, cool. But, now I tell, when we got back from Nashville, I said, oh, George Kittle was there. What? He's into curling? My God. Why would he be there? What did he talk? Did he talk to you? Was he nice? Blah, blah, blah. And then, I've shared this story with a few of my friends who aren't curlers, but they're football fans, and their mind has dropped. And a couple of them even shared it on their social medias. So I think in terms of visibility and legitimacy for the sport as we enter these new times, not just the Olympic year, but a first ever pro league coming up in Rock League, it just brings a lot of legitimacy to the sport. I think really sets the tone that pro athletes take this game seriously, and it requires a lot of physical strength. If Jared Allen's talking about how hard he found it and how he had to challenge himself, I think the quote was he pushed himself out of his comfort zone, and he really enjoyed that about the sport. I think it just really shows how precise our game is, how physically demanding and how mentally demanding it is, and just gives our own athletes a better look worldwide.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the one thing that's great about Jared, and I think he doesn't get enough credit for this, he is willing to talk about curling anytime, anywhere, and it would be very easy for him to just say, look, I've told my story. It was a post football career bet. I wanted to make the Olympics in something. My friends bet me I couldn't do it. I saw curling on the TV and I got hooked. And now I just curl. He could easily say, look, I've told that story a million times. Why do you need to talk to me again about it? But he is not afraid to talk to anyone about it. He's done tons of interviews. I'm sure he'll do more leading up to Tahoe. I talked to him for Broomgate. He didn't end up in the actual podcast, but I emailed him and he was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. I'm free next week, kind of thing. So that's one thing I think is really great too, is it's not just bringing the visibility to the sport with the fact that we have a Pro Football Hall of Famer who is also good at curling, but it's also that he's, as you said, Robbie, willing to share, just how difficult he finds the game and how much he enjoys it. So yeah, I think it's going to be great for Tahoe. There have been some naysayers though, Robbie, that say it's bad for the game or that it delegitimizes the slams or something like that. You got any thoughts on that? Because that's been a kind of a hot button topic this week.
I'm just curious, where did you get those comments?
Well, I mean, you know where they are, Robbie. You know where they are. They're on the Grand Slam of Curling Facebook page, of course.
Facebook.
But no, I have seen some comments even on Twitter and on other apps. There's a curling Discord that, people have been getting into it a little bit over there as well. So yeah, just curious about, your thoughts on that. Cause I certainly have some.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Like, just point blank, I don't know other way to say it. You literally have a world-class athlete with so many eyeballs, bringing his attention to the sport. And here's another point I was going to make, and this is actually a perfect time to do so. What I like about Jared Allen, what I like about how he's bringing it into it, you mentioned, it's not like this was a post-football career thing. He went on, tried it once, brought a bunch of cameras and said, see you later. He's been curling now for almost a decade, or upwards of a decade. And you mentioned he played in national championships. And what I like about the Jared Allen, I remember seeing him in the first year, I think, and he had a stabilizer or a crutch. He could, he could get it down there. He kind of knew what he was doing. But in the latest video series that came out in that sit down, he was throwing, and you can see how much technical work he put in based on his delivery, even just his release, his grip. He's throwing it really well, which says to me he's backing up what he has said. Like, he's talked about how much he's loved the game, but you can see he's worked at it. And I think that just shows that he's not a smoke and mirror show. He's not a publicity stunt. He's an athlete who loves the game, knows how to train, and he got good. So I think to all those naysayers, if we even get past the point of, the publicity's not worth it and we're leaving out other teams, I get that. And, to each their own, that's their opinion. But we're bringing in an athlete who's worked his ass off for almost 10 years, truly loves the game. And it's not like we're throwing him with a club team. He's got an two-time Olympic gold medalist with him in Johnny Moe, who also brings a lot of eyeballs on himself. And let's be honest, it's in the rules. Everyone knows there's sponsors exemptions in these events, and that's the perfect way to do it. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's the thing for me is one of the main arguments that you're seeing is people saying, well, what about team 16? Like, if you're 16th in the world rankings and you get passed up for Jared Allen, how does that make you feel? Or how is that good for the sport? And I said this a few times on social media, but, team 16 almost never gets into the slam. If you're team 16, guess what? That you're probably not in. As you said, Robbie, there's sponsor exemptions in almost every slam. Here's a great example. Everyone loves the tier 2, right? I mean, they love it so much. We've added 2 more this year. Guess who gets left out when the tier 2 team wins and they get into a slam later in the year? Yeah, it's team 16. Oh, there's that some fresh news for you? So that to me is something that I thought was a little, people are getting mad about something that happens at almost every slam. And also, there's no rules that say the slams have to take teams 1 to 16. Absolutely. There's no constitution. It's a business. If the slams wanted to bring the teams rated number 100 to 116 in the world, they could do that if they wanted to. So again, it's 1 slam out of 5. And I just don't get the whole, you're screwing over a team by bringing them. Also, this is very close to the U.S. Olympic trials. Nothing has been confirmed yet, but I think there is a chance that the U.S. teams may not be in Tahoe. I don't know for sure, but I do think that's a possibility. And so this also feels a little bit like the slams perhaps preparing for that possibility by bringing in an American athlete, who's going to bring eyeballs to the sport as a sort of, replacement, if you want to call it that, for the American teams who may not be playing in Tahoe. So, I mean, we've already seen, I believe Corey Dropkin's team schedule didn't include Tahoe on it. And so right away there, you could say, well, it's not team 16 that's missing out, because this is sort of a replacement for a U.S. team that might not be there anyway, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's funny because I think I'm one of the very few unique people who can speak to this on both sides on 2 accounts. Number one, I've spent a lot of my career as an entertainer, as have you. And a lot of times you're in the ticket selling business and you know how important publicity is. And I'm not talking about curling. I'm talking about, for me, it's music and live shows. And for you, it's comedy and live shows, if you will. But the other side of that is I've been number 16 many times. I've been BEI at the Briar. And the thing is, from an entertainment and more of an entrepreneurial spirit, I'm also not a dummy. And I realize how many ticket sales and eyeballs or I'm going to bring versus somebody like a Jared Allen, who's bringing not only thousands of fans who perhaps have never seen the sport, but also mainstream media who are very interested in this story. It just seems like there's got to be some more big picture thinking around perhaps the community of curling and thinking what this can do for the game in the long run.
Totally. And notice how many top curlers shared the news. It wasn't like a big wave of slam curlers going, why are they letting Jared Allen into this? It was people sharing the story and getting excited about it. So as you said, Robbie, I think everyone's pulling in the same direction here that are in the slams, the players, the staff, everyone wants curling to get bigger. And this is one of those ways to do that. Okay, let's switch focus to on ice stuff, or things that are going to impact on ice play and already have, as we saw a ton of broom changes and the broom rule changes. We also had an acquisition in the broom world, but maybe we'll start with the rule changes. Teams have now, it came down from World Curling in June. Teams are now forced to use specific foams from each brand. So Balance Plus teams can use the original RS or the RS 3.0 head. Smart Broom teams can use their, quote, less firm foam. Goldline teams can use the Impact with the Pulsar. Hardline ice pad teams have to use the recreational foam, and Endgame teams have to use the Endgame Icon. Obviously, we did discuss sort of Foamgate last year a bunch on this pod, but Robbie, your initial reaction when you saw that drop in June?
I don't think there's a need to go back and beat a dead horse and recap what happened last season.
No, totally.
We all know what happened, but it's just nice to see an equal playing field, in my opinion. I wish World Curling had have made a call earlier during the season last year. I know they were in a tough position. I understand that. I'm not trying to spark any controversy in that department, but it's nice to finally get some resolve to this situation, because behind the scenes, things were getting tense. A lot of friendships were up in the air, and not even behind the scenes. There was a couple times on the ice, perhaps, that the cameras didn't pick up, but you saw some words being exchanged back and forth. And I just think it's something that we didn't want to see in the game. I don't think it accomplished anything. I think it was just setting us all back. So it's nice to see. It's nice to see just some clarity and something equal. That okay, we have a set rules. These are all accepted. Here's where we are. This is what we're going to go with, especially in an Olympic year of all years. Certainly an important time to do it. But I don't think we're done even this season with, trying out the brooms and still testing which one of the legal ones, if there is an advantage to one. So I think we're still going to be talking about brooms for the next little while. Yeah. But it's nice to see at least some boundaries and somewhat of an equal playing field.
Well, and I think just the regulation aspect of it is good. I think that in the past there was room for broom companies to make the foam harder with almost no check or balance to that, right? Like you could kind of say, okay, a bunch of our top teams asked us to make the foam harder. It looks exactly the same as the foam from last year. You wouldn't even know it's firmer unless you touched it. Yep. And obviously that got taken to its logical extreme last season with how aggressive Balance Plus was in their marketing strategy around their new broom, and then Goldline following them closely behind. But yeah, I agree. It's an Olympic year. You have to get it right. And I love that. That's the thing I love the most, is that it's clear. If you're using hardline brooms, this is the foam you have to use. And we know what it looks like. We know what it feels like. And we can test it, and we can ban you if you're using, something untoward. So I think, we learned this with Broomgate. We went through it all on the pod, but, we learned in Broomgate that having rules that can be interpreted in various ways is a problem. And I think, World Curling did well to correct it. And I wanted to say, I know you've had a busy summer. I don't know how much you were talking to teams, but the one thing that was interesting to me that came out of this is I talked to top curlers a lot, and I had some of them say that they're curious to see how certain teams perform this year. And I'm not going to name teams on either side of that equation, but I had some top teams specifically mention some other teams who had maybe mastered certain sweeping techniques with the harder foam, and kind of said, I'll be curious to see where they end up in the world rankings this year, because the foam is going to hurt them more than it's going to hurt other teams.
Yeah, and it goes back to those conversations on the ice that got pretty intense. And I mean, I don't want to say too much about that, because obviously every curler, if you're in a Grand Slam, is certainly a very talented player, a very skilled athlete. You belong there. But it will be interesting to see, because you and I haven't played competitively for so long. We've heard kind of secondhand, and we've watched these brooms in action, but I've never used one. It's not the biggest controversy in the Tuesday night league at the Cornwall Curling Club these days, but it will be interesting to see. There is some good points. And the other thing I wanted to talk about to add to that is, I think it's great that we have boundaries and we have rules, but now it's really important to enforce them. And because I think there will be perhaps a few people throughout the year, maybe try to sneak something in here and there. I'm not trying to start rumors or anything, but perhaps it's something that, as the trials get closer, as the Olympics get closer, who knows, and if that is ever something that happens that truly, and they're flat out busted, it's really important that enforcement goes into that to lay down the law and set an example early.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will. And I think one thing we're also going to see is, now that you have these, 6 options of head you can use, I do think we are going to see teams do a lot of experimentation in the early part of the season to figure out what the best combo is. Yep. We saw that last year. Most of the teams at the Scotties, Brier, and Worlds were using a Goldline head. Even if they were a hardline team and using a hardline shaft, they were using a Goldline head, because they had figured that the Goldline Impact head, I believe it was the Impact, was the best head of all of them. So I do think you're also going to see that among the top teams, that they're going to experiment and figure out what the best broom combo is. And speaking of combining broom brands in the off season, another huge move, I wrote an article about this for the Grand Slam of Curling.com. But Goldline acquires Hardline. They are keeping the brand alive, at least for now. So you can still go into a curling store or go online and buy a Hardline broom. They haven't brought it all under the Goldline umbrella, but Goldline bought Hardline. What was your reaction to that news when you saw it drop, Robbie?
I had a couple different thoughts. I think the big one was congratulations to Goldline. Like, that's
for sure. Yeah.
That's a very, very cool thing. And I've just got to know the Goldline crew, obviously working over the past 10 years in curling and curling myself before that. And they're a great crew, great company. Always a pleasure to chat to them and keep up with them. So congratulations on them. Hardline was, it's not like you're kind of absorbing perhaps an upstart company or something that a few teams have been trying. This Hardline was the broom on tour. Like, let's be
no
real.
question. Yeah. So I think it was 85% of the top teams were using it, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Right. So, and I don't know anything about behind the scenes or how that all went down, so I don't want to speculate on anything, but I think it's a great thing for Goldline. Also, congratulations to Hardline. They worked their asses off for 15 years at least.
And retiring, and enjoy retirement. You get to sell off your company. Not easy for a curling company to find a buyer, I would imagine.
No. And I think it benefits too, as we look to grow the game. And, I don't know how many times I get people at the club just who maybe got into it a couple of years ago saying, I want to buy a broom. What should I get? And it's kind of like, well, what do you mean? So, well, there's Goldline, there's this, there's that. It kind of centralizes everything. I think it's just a good thing to kind of make things simpler for the consumer at the recreational level, but also props to Goldline as well for keeping that Hardline broom and not to, so the teams who have used that for the last 3 years, as we enter the last year of a quad, they can kind of keep things rolling and know what to expect. So I think it's a great thing. Congratulations to both parties. It's a big thing.
Yeah, it is a big thing, I think, for the sport. I think what I'm most curious about, and we're not going to get an answer on this for a year, but I did talk to Pete, the head of Goldline, CEO of Goldline Curling, for the article on the Grand Slam website. And I've talked to other people involved with Goldline. Ryan Fry, has had a hand in working with Goldline, not just necessarily on this, but with gravity management and that whole scene. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how they approach top team sponsorship, because that was something that, you sort of mentioned, Robbie. A lot of the teams were using Hardline on tour, and I think it's because a lot of teams thought and think that Hardlines are the best brooms. But I do also think Hardline had a very aggressive strategy in acquiring those top teams and signing them to contracts and paying them to use the Hardline broom in a way that really no other company was doing. Goldline and Balance Plus have always been a sort of, let's sponsor a couple teams at the top level, but
and
we're
really
not
sponsor them.
Yeah, and that's it. We're not looking for like a, market saturation necessarily. And so Pete had told me we're honoring all the contracts for this year that Hardline teams had with Hardline, because of course a lot of those contracts get signed for the entire quad.
Sure.
But I will be curious to see how they handle that. I've heard some unique ideas about how that might all work. Pete told me we're not looking to take money away from top teams. It's not like we're going to, a year from now say, okay, we're pulling all of this funding that we're putting into the top teams right now. But I do think they are bandying about some ideas behind the scenes as far as exactly how they're going to decide which teams get a share of that pot. And I think that's going to be an interesting storyline to follow once the kind of dust settles. Everybody's got to get through this Olympic year, but I think once the dust settles, it's going to be interesting to see how that all shapes out. Now, it is an Olympic year. Of course, we did get some Olympic trials announcements over the course of the summer. So we'll kind of go through these country by country. Some countries held trials. Some countries just named their teams straight up. Obviously, we know the US and Canadian trials are coming up this fall, which is going to be super exciting for fans of curling in general, but of course, fans of curling in those two countries. We'll start with Scotland, and I think probably no surprise on the men's side, Bruce Mowat named the men's Olympic rep, and on the women's side, it is Rebecca Morrison getting the nod. Your thoughts on the two Scotland, or I guess since it's the Olympics, the two Great Britain representatives at the Olympics in Milan?
Yeah, and I think the two words that sum it up for me, you already said, was no surprise. Morrison on the women's side, and of course Mowat on the men's side. You look at a team like Bruce Mowat and just the way they've rolled last season, it was truly remarkable. I think it was 4 out of 5, and the one they didn't win was white. So it was literally a Scottish sweep in the Grand Slam scene. That's unheard of. That is absolutely unheard of. So there's no doubt in my mind they were going to be the team. And obviously going into the Olympics, they're going to be the team to beat. Morrison, we haven't seen them as much. They're a little bit younger. They seem to be more on that up and coming trajectory, but they've got a lot of experience as well. And I think they could be a dark horse. We're going to talk about them a little bit more, perhaps, if we talk about an event coming up. But I think, that there's certainly some pressure on Morrison. The defending gold medalist at the Olympics is Great Britain. So they're going to have a lot of eyes on them naturally. And then the retirement of Eve Muirhead was announced after that. So it was sort of a breakthrough for Morrison. But I think for Mowat, we've seen that discussion so many times. Obviously, white right behind them, and a remarkable team they are. Like, absolutely mind-blowing how good they've gotten even in the last 2 years. And they've got off to a hot start with a win in Oakville. So it's not like they've let their foot off the gas and, let it slow them down, or perhaps it's easy to get unmotivated, I guess, if you see someone else get the nod. But you know what? My comments is it's a good time to be involved in Great British curling.
No, absolutely. I think one thing that just sticks out, and I agree with everything you said about Morrison. I think they're a young team. I think this is a team you look at more as a competitor in 2030 than you do in 2026. And that's not to say that they won't be competitive at the Olympics, because of course they will. But yeah, last year we even discussed it on this podcast. It's 2 years in a row now that Ross White has beaten Bruce at the Scottish National Championships. Yep. We're so used to, in Canada, you win the national championship, you go to the Worlds, doesn't matter where you're ranked. Of course, Mowat and White knew the deal going into all of that. It's whoever was going to be top in a bunch of different, things that would go. But I think Bruce Mowat really silenced any of the potential doubters with the Worlds win, right? You win the Worlds, you win 4 Grand Slams last year. Yes, Ross White broke through and won his first Grand Slam, but it couldn't be anyone else. And I think that's one thing that Mowat did really well for themselves. And not that us talking about it on a podcast really matters that much, but you win that world championship after people kind of say, well, what about White? He just won his first slam and he's won 2 Scottish nationals in a row. You go out and you win the worlds, and then you win the players championship the week right after. That's going to silence a lot of doubters. So yeah, very obvious choice there. And I think the right one, and most of us would consider them the gold medal favorite as we sit here in September. Over in Switzerland, also no surprise, it's the number 2 teams in the world on both the men's and women's side. Yannick Schwaller for the men get the nod, and Silvana Tirinzoni for the women will be going.
Yeah, 2 front runners, obviously the obvious choices out of Switzerland. Tirinzoni, I mean, they've been on a roll. They've had so many great events on the world stage. Was it 4 in a row they won the women's worlds? Correct me if I'm wrong there, but what a run they've had on the international stage, multi-time world champions. So that was certainly not a surprise. But the team I wanted to talk about more was Schwaller. That's a team that kind of on, I don't want to say a rebuilding stage over the last couple of years, but they joined forces with Benoit Schwartz. And they really seemed to, I found last year, especially the last half of last season, they really came on strong. They're working as a unit. Benoit and Yannick really seem to have a great chemistry in the back end. And again, we're probably going to talk about them and shortly down the road in the show. But I think that's a good team. We talk about trajectories so much and where you want to be on this path to the Olympics, or, on a smaller level in Canada, when do you want to peak for provincials to get to the Brier and so on. We've heard it for years in curling. I just think they're on a great trajectory right now in terms of timing. I think there's a lot of potential on that team and a lot of talent. And it's just, it just seems to me like things are adding up for them. And I think they're going to be a real team to watch for at the Olympics. Great choice by Switzerland.
Yeah, I agree. And I think
they won, but
well, I think, some of these choices are obvious, and Schwaller is number 2 in the world and literally won the silver medal at the World Championships against Bruce in Moose Jaw, and then also lost the final of the players to Bruce. That was a rematch of the world final there in Toronto. But they're a team that is being pushed. Marco Husley is also a top 10 team. Michael Brunner is not too far behind. So again, it's maybe not the same level of controversies, the wrong word, but maybe not the same level of competition that Mowat's getting from Ross White. But those are 2 great teams as well. And so, for them to be selected, I know it's a big thing for them. It's the first Olympics for a couple of them. So looking forward to seeing their performance in Italy as well. Over in Sweden, again, no surprise on the men's side. Niklas Edin hasn't really had a competitor for the last God knows how many years. He's been very good at just whoever his competition might be, getting them to agree to play with him. So he picked up Oscar Eriksson and Rasmus Vrano, and that's been pretty much it on the men's side. But on the women's side, Anna Hasselborg getting the nod over Isabella Vrano. Maybe not super surprising given the world rankings right now. Anna Hasselborg ranked number 3, Isabella ranked number 12. But there were times even last year where that gap was a lot tighter. Anna was kind of floating in that 4 to 6 range, and Isabella was in that 7 to 9 range. But they do go with Hasselborg. And just quick thoughts on Sweden. I think neither of those picks too surprising.
No, and I think too on the Olympic stage, it's easy for curlers and curling fans and people who have just grown up around the curling community. They think about that kind of Cinderella story, or what about this team, or give this team a chance. But Hasselborg's been there and done it. She has a gold medal. She's won it on the Olympic stage. So I think you have to go with experience in that decision. They're still in their prime, playing as well as they ever have. To me, it was, I don't want to say an obvious choice, because Vrano is an extremely talented team. They've won the players. They're certainly going to be a force to be reckoned with for the next couple decades, perhaps. But I think right now Hasselborg was the right choice in terms of, just experience and trust. I don't know if that's the right word, but just the person who you want under that pressure, under the lights on the big stage. I don't think that was a mistake on behalf of Swedish curling. Anna Hasburg is a great choice.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that gets talked about, maybe not as much, is the funding for a lot of these teams depends on their Olympic finish. So these federations do kind of need to send the teams they think will have the most success based on that. And as you said, Robbie, the experience, a big factor in that. Finally, obviously there have been other teams named, but there was no real controversy. So we haven't really talked about them, but for the men, Czechia, Klima will be going. For Germany, it's Muscatovic. For Italy, it's Retornaz. And for Norway, it's Ramsfjell. And on the women's side, for China, it's Wang, Denmark, DuPont, Italy, Constantini. Again, no surprises there. But the one where there was potentially a surprise, the Korean National Championships held in June. As we have seen, three South Korean women's teams in a bunch of the slams last year in Eunjung Kim, Eunji Kim, and Sungyoon Ha. And then world junior champion Bobae Kong is banging on the door right behind them. So that Korean national championship, which determined their Olympic rep, was quite a tournament. And it was Eunji Kim who got the win and will be representing South Korea at the Olympics in February.
Yeah, you mentioned it. So much depth in that field, but Kim has been such a solid team for so long. I think, Kim also, in her home country, I think it was 2018, came home with the silver medal. So she's got experience. But you know what? Kim is just such a team with such potential. You see them; they're young. They play so well, but they just get better and better almost with every year that goes by. So I think getting them this experience will be huge for that team. And I certainly don't think any team who, no matter who had won the trials, would put that country at a disadvantage, if that makes sense. It's funny. I talked to Peter Gallant in true PEI form. I ran into him on the street there one day earlier in the summer. I think it was just after these went on and this event was going on. And he was telling me just how competitive it was. And for me, it's June. I'm going to play music on a patio somewhere. And, they are having their Olympic trials. So they're going to be tough. They're going to be very, very tough at the Olympics. They've beat every team there is to beat, on the world stage, and certainly a big experience for them.
Yeah, they defeated Sungyoon Ha in the final. There was maybe a little bit of a surprise. I think probably going in, we might have thought the veterans on both sides, Kim and Kim, would have been the teams we would have expected to see in the final, but Kim actually finished fourth. Bobae Kong came in third, and then Sungyoon Ha made it to the final against Kim before they lost. But yeah, I love Kim, especially Minji Kim the third. I just feel like she's really sparked that team. For me, she's a top 5 third in the world on the women's side. I really think she has the talent to be among the best players in the world on the women's side of the game. And that's not to discount the rest of the team. They're all very good, but it's not really a surprise. Kim was at one time in the middle of like a tier 1, tier 2. They weren't guaranteed to be in every slam. And then ever since Minji came out of juniors and they added her to the team, they've just been gangbusters. So yeah, love to see them there. Okay, we're going to run through some news items, and we're just going through these quick. We're getting close to the end here. But it's been announced for the first time ever, Grand Slam of Curling Wheelchair Invitational. I had John Thurston and Chrissy Molnar on this very podcast to talk about it. So everyone already knows where I'm at on it. Robbie, what was your thoughts, your reaction when you saw the news of the first ever Grand Slam of Curling Wheelchair Invitational?
Finally, they have a chance to perform on the big stage. These are very, very highly skilled athletes who deserve to get that recognition, deserve to play on that big stage. I think it's wonderful for the game. I think it's wonderful for any wheelchair athletes who perhaps want to get into the game and they see that opportunity, on the early stages of their career, something to look forward to for them. So I think it's amazing. Any way to include an inclusion in sport, in my mind, is a great thing. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to welcome the athletes when we're on site. And I just think it's a great thing for the game. Hard to argue.
Totally agree. And I think I loved what Nick Sulsky said. He had a post on LinkedIn, announcing the logo for the event and all the promo and stuff, and said, it's not just the Olympics that puts a lightning bolt into curling. into able-bodied curling, it also puts a lightning bolt into wheelchair curling. And exactly like you said, Robbie, Chrissy and John both told me a story of just essentially being quote unquote discovered by a wheelchair curling coach, just being at an event in their chairs. And so, you do wonder if, like you said, just the little bit of increased visibility, being at the Grand Slams, getting to play the final of that invitational on arena ice in London, I think will be great for them. Now, we knew before the season there was going to be 3 tier 2 events, but what we didn't know, and you and I haven't had a chance to talk about this yet either, what we didn't know is one of the tier 2s was going to be a U25 tournament and a U15 tournament. And that's going to be happening in Nisku, and same deal with the Wheelchair Invitational. The finals of both of those events will be on the arena ice at the Silent Ice Center in Nisku. Your thoughts on the U25 and U15 events?
Once again, I think the more the merrier. I think it's great. Imagine being a U15 curler and having the chance to get on a Grand Slam ice in the main event and play on a final in front of that. We've been to that arena already. We know what it looks like. It's beautiful. It's special. It feels big. It feels like an event. And I think that's just going to add a lot of motivation for a lot of those younger teams to put that extra work in. Not that they're not working hard already, but if you know that that carrot is on the end of that stick, you're going to chase it pretty hard. So I think it's a great thing for the game. I think it's a great thing for development of the game. And really just for those athletes who really want to go to the next level, really want to make that lifetime commitment of training, to perhaps play professionally one day, which is a real thing now in curling for the first time. It's a great way to get that first look, get that experience of playing under the big, on the big stage, especially when I say this, I mean more for the U15s. We've seen a few big events for U25s in recent years, but there's some great curlers. I had the chance, the Canadian juniors were in Summerside last year, and I just did some work up there, just emceeing. And man, oh man, I stayed for some of the games. It was mind blowing how accurate they were. I think I played the juniors in 2009, and I was certainly not even close to that accurate with anything. So the game's in a great spot. They deserve eyeballs. They deserve that experience, and it's a good way to give it to them.
Final year of a quad, but British curling doesn't seem to care. They were already going to send Bruce Mowat to the Olympics, so they're shaking things up. Ross White initially staying the same. Obviously, Bruce Mowat's team staying the same, but then we saw the 2 teams underneath them, Kyle Waddle and James Craik, sort of join forces. So the 3 members of James Craik's team, Mark Watt, Angus Bryce, Blair Haswell, joining forces with the Waddle brothers. And then James is now skipping a team of mostly fresh out of junior players. We're going to see them at the U25 event in Nisku. And then Duncan McFadgen of Ross White's team gets injured, and British curling says, okay, Craig Waddle, you now play for Ross White, because Duncan's out until December. So had to abandon his brother and their plan to be a 5-man team over there. Lots going on in British curling. What do you make of all of it, Robbie?
I think it'd make a great TV show, to be honest.
No kidding. I'd love to be a fly on the wall when the Waddle brothers were told they couldn't play together anymore.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked to see the shakeups with Craig's team early on, because we saw them a few times in the Grand Slams. And
they played in a couple last year. Yeah, they were in and Charlottetown.
Yeah, and it's funny enough, James actually stayed for a few days after in Charlottetown. We played golf together the day after the slam. And, I was just kind of picking his brain and asking him about, his vision, what he wants to do in curling. And he seemed really, really gunned to get to the top. He was well aware that, he had White and Mowat in front of him. He knew the goal was high, but he wasn't intimidated by it. And it was just kind of part of his training plan. He was telling me what he does in the off season to put the work in to keep up. So it was kind of, I don't want to say upsetting for me to see that, but I was just a little bit discouraged because he seemed so passionate when we chatted. But you know what? He landed, as you said, with a young team. That's not a bad place to be. It'll be a little bit different for James in terms of, really being that veteran on the team, the role model, kind of more of a boss perhaps. So it'll be interesting to see with the brothers, the Waddle brothers. That's an interesting move. I played in a lot of bands with my brother, and it's not always smooth when those things come up. But you know what? Their brother, blood is thicker than medals. So they'll figure ways to work around that. But I think it's a good team or good chance for Craig as well, to get that nod. He'll get a lot of great experience. We've talked about how great White has been. But again, I said this earlier in the show, but British curling, especially on the men's side, is just really in a good place right now.
Oh, they're so deep. And yeah, I feel like when they know that Mowat is going to the Olympics, I believe, I don't know if this is official and I'm just like making this up, but I believe there's an opportunity, like White might go to the Worlds this year with Mowat going to the Olympics. I don't know if that's been decided or anything, but I believe there's a potential for that to happen. So to me, this is just them trying to figure out what's their best team underneath those teams. I think you'd imagine that they'd like to keep Mowat and White together for another quad if they're all willing to go another 4 years. I had Bruce on this very podcast earlier this summer. He said his plan is to go another quad. He thinks Bobby and Hammy are the same. Maybe Grant is the only one potentially mulling over stepping away. Not that he said that. He just, he seemed a little more sure that Bobby and Hammy would be sticking with it. But yeah, I think for the Craig team, I think something had to give there is the impression I get, that the mix wasn't quite right. So I think that's part of it. And also they saw how good the Waddle brothers were last year and just wanted to give them a little more reinforcement. So yeah, definitely going to be interesting to follow that storyline all year and see where British curling ends up for the next quad. We always get dialed into the Canadian team changes after every quad, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Britain as well. Final quick hit. I just wanted to give a little shout out here to my lead brother, John Landsteiner, announcing his retirement from the sport. I think this is the first in what will be a bit of a wave after this quad is done. I do think we are going to see many people, not many, but multiple people in very high positions in the sport stepping away from the game. For John, didn't play a ton last year. It was already kind of becoming Colin Huffman's spot on John Schuster's team. And so Landsteiner says that's enough. Great guy. Loved playing against John, getting to know him a little bit over the years. Quiet guy, but great guy. And if you talk to Tyler George or John Schuster, they'll tell you just how important his sort of even keel, steady demeanor was to their 2018 Olympic win. You got a couple words here for John, Robbie?
100%. I'm going to echo what you said. Played against him quite a bit, lead on lead. And we actually became pretty good friends on the road when I was playing. And then when I got to continue on working around the Grand Slams, he was one of the guys that I always kind of looked to see if he was around at night or where, what have you. But seeing him win that gold medal in 2018, not that I wasn't happy for all of them. Matt Hamilton's also a very close friend of mine, but I was very happy for John. There's an old saying we use in PEI, they're the salt of the earth. And John is that guy. So I'll miss you, buddy. We're going to keep on playing Steinerized in your honor. Steiner Brothers theme song.
Yeah.
And I'll miss our chats, miss our times. But you know what? A well-deserved retirement. You've got a gold medal to take home with you. So all the best.
Yeah, all the best, John. Fantastic player. And we'll miss you on tour for sure. All right. Finally, this is longer than a lot of our pods will be when it's just the two of us. But of course, we had so much summer news to catch up on. But as you're listening to this podcast, we are just days away from the very first Grand Slam of curling event of the year, the AMJ Masters in London, Ontario. Before we get to talking about the event, maybe some predictions. Robbie, you were away when this happened, but we did the first ever pot draft. Where the teams were divided up into 4 pots based on their seeding. And seems like the feedback from the players has been very good. What did you make of the very first pot-style draft for the Grand Slams?
It was unique. I liked it. I like anything new you can add to an event. I'm always a big fan of. We've had the same kind of way for so many years. It was just getting so stale. It was just something to look forward to. It was fun to watch. Johnny Moe did a great job. So big props to him on that. But I can't say, sorry, Hammy, but I'm not a huge international football fan. So I can't say I'm super familiar with it, but anything to shake things up, anything to create a little bit of unknown, a little bit of excitement and anticipation before an event, I'm a big fan. And there's one pool, especially on the men's side, that will be very interesting.
Okay, well, I mean, I've already said how much I like the draft, so we can get right into it. What's the interesting pool for you? I think on the women's side, it's somewhat obvious. It's that pool A. You got Hasselborg, Einarson, Constantini, Xenia, Schwaller. Even on the podcast itself, we called it the group of death, which is, if you don't follow soccer, that's a common soccer term for basically they're usually in a pot style draft, ends up being one pool that's really tough. So I think we've talked a lot about the women's one, so I'm curious to hear, Robbie, on the men's side, what is your what's the pool you've got marked down?
I just had to confirm the letter, because in true Robbie form, I wrote Gushu's pool in my notes. But it's pool A as well. Gushu, Retornez, Schwaller, all there. The top 3 team. Oh, sorry, like listed in that pool. And that's going to be a tough one, especially Retornez coming into an Olympic year. You know, they're going to be just all guns a firing. I know they've been working hard. And Schwaller, we talked about my thoughts on them, and always the favorite Brad Gushue in there. That to me was the pool that looked tough. So that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I agree. I think same thing. It's, what happens, and I said this on the pod when I did it with John. What you tend to see with these pot style drafts is you have teams that have typically been very good.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, maybe they haven't had some great results as of late, or, for whatever reason, they're down a little lower in the world rankings. And then that's how you end up with these sort of pools of death, if you will. And that's exactly what's happened with Brad Gushue. I mean, when was the last time we've seen him out of the top 5?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often. And then, like you said, Retornaz winning a few slams the year before, and then last year really was not their best year.
Nope.
They're ranked 11th right now, I believe, or 12th. So yeah, it's been a tough go for them. But yeah, hopefully they can get their feet back underneath them. Do love that pool. I kind of like the all European pool as well. Pool B, you've got Mowat, Muskatovitz, Husley, and Adine. Obviously 3 of those 4 teams going to be in the Olympics. I'd like some of those matchups. Husley started the year off with an 8-0 win over Bruce Mowat in Baden in the semifinals. And then I also kind of like the Canadian Trials preview pool, where we got Brad Jacobs, John Epping, and Ryland Kleider all in the same pool too.
Yeah, and then you also have Dunstone and McEwen in the same pool as well.
Yeah.
So that was the one that kind of jumped out at me. Is, we'll talk about predictions for that down the road, but I always love seeing a Dunstone McEwen matchup. To me, they're the ones trying to really fight to break through to get that top 2 on the Canadian scene. Yeah, I love the draft. I like the pools. Again, anything you can add to just spice things up a little bit, change things up, make things exciting. I'm all for it. Big thanks to Hammy McMillan for that.
Yeah, totally. And like I said, usually players, as well as anyone, curlers, if they can find something to complain about, they will. And as far as I know, the reception to this behind the scenes has been very good. So.
Yep.
So that's always positive. Makes me feel like this is a format we will potentially see again. All right, I'll put you on the spot.
Yep.
Your prediction for the AMJ Masters: is Bruce Mowat going to continue his run of dominance? Is Rachel Homan going to find her way to another slam final? She made all of the finals last year. Who do you like on both sides of the ledger?
All right.
And maybe give me a dark horse. Give me a winner and give me a dark horse.
I've got them all for you here, my friend.
Okay.
I am going to start with the tier 2, or excuse me, on the tier 1. I guess we'll start with the men.
Okay.
I am going to say no. Mowat is not going to continue the dominance.
Okay.
So what I did is I picked a top 3 for every the men's and the women's side. So my top 3 for tier 1, I had Team Jacobs, Team Schwaller, and Team Mowat.
Okay.
Based on pool where they end up for semifinals, I don't want to select a top 1st, 2nd, 3rd, but for my winner, I took Schwaller.
Okay. You think they're going to break through?
Absolutely. They've had a good start to the season. They just really seem to, grow every event last year, coming on towards the end of the season. Benoit Schwartz was just looking unstoppable as well. And I think they're coming into this year full of confidence. It's a great time for them to peak, and I don't think they're going to waste any time. I think they're going to have that big breakthrough on the Grand Slam.
Okay.
And get the first win in London.
Yeah,
Heard it
yeah.
here first,
Benoit's
folks.
won once before, but the other three,
Right.
Yannick, Sven, and Pablo, have never won a slam before.
Yep.
So yeah, we saw it last year with Ross White. It is always special getting to see a team win their first one. So
Yeah.
I like that pick. I like
And
that pick.
speaking of White, I actually had 2 dark horses on the
Okay.
men's tier 1 side. Number 1, Ross White.
Yep.
They're going to keep momentum rolling, and they've obviously been at it for quite a while now. And Retornez.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a big year for Retornez. I
Okay.
think they knew the Olympics was coming for this whole cycle. We saw that dominance the year before last. It's certainly in them. And I think they're just so focused and dialed in and let's just say excited for this home country Olympics. What an opportunity for them. I think they're going to be very, very tough this year. Almost my pick to win, but
Okay.
put them in the
Okay.
dark horse comment for now.
All right.
Or-
And on the women's side.
The women, my top 3, this might shock you, but Rachel Holman, Fujisawa.
Oh, okay.
I've thought Fujisawa coming off the Olympic trials, they've had that high, level, high focused event under their belt so far. And I think that'll be a big advantage this early in the season. And Tiranzoni.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't really need to elaborate on that much.
No.
And my dark horse, Team Rano.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've been playing lots. And I think too, as much as we talked about Hasselberg being a great pick, and we went through all the teams and countries, the teams that didn't get picked, we're not going to sit here and pretend that there's not a little chip on their shoulder and they're not going to be out with something to prove, not just this year, but until the next Olympics. So I think this is going to be, we're going to see a lot of teams going from really good to great. And I think Rano is going to be one of them.
Yeah.
And they're going to be fun to watch.
I like it. I won't add too much to that, other than for a similar reason, paying a close eye to Xenia Schwaller this year. They were a team. I had a tweet about this, but they've been unbelievable in curling clubs over the last year and a half or so. They have great results in curling clubs. Haven't quite put it together in arenas. They have yet to make the playoffs at a slam, but their record in clubs is so good. And at some point, they're just going to start winning slam games. Last year in a curling club, they played in 11 events, which already that's a lot of times to be in curling club events. They won 4 of them. They made the finals in 4 other ones. And then they made 3 semis on top of that. And then they had a big win to start this year as well. So, and then made the quarters in Oakville, qualifying out of the A side. So yeah, Schwaller's a team I'm watching this year. I think they're a team that's also going to take a step. I mean, maybe they're not going to win a slam, but I think they're a team that you're going to see take a step this year. And I'm excited to watch.
We're really just fishing for bread. Let's be honest here.
Robbie, before we sign off, you told me you want to say a little something before we get to the end here.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a big shout out to the family of a very close friend of mine, John Wostowski, who passed away last week. I met John at the Curl for Kids in Oakville, I believe in 2016, and it's a big fundraising pro-am celebrity tournament that raises money for the Oakville Children's Hospital. And John played on my team the very first year. Nobody loved the game more than he did, and it was very contagious. He was sort of a big reason and a big factor in reminding me of why I started to play this game, why I love it. So it was a big loss for me personally to see him pass away this week. And I just want to say a shout out to John and a big thank you for just being the heart and soul of what curling really is in terms of a human, and thinking of his daughter Dana and her husband Bill and their whole family and John's extended family, and wishing you guys strength in these tough times.
Well said. Rest in peace, John. And yeah, like you said, sometimes when you play the game at a top level, it's good to be reminded of what makes this game great. Sounds like he was a special guy. So shout out to John and his family. Thanks everybody for listening. As we said, we will be back here just about every week throughout the course of the season here on Broom Brothers. So thank you so much for tuning in. Give us a follow on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, wherever you're at. All these episodes also available in video format on YouTube. And we're looking forward to seeing you in London at the AMJ Masters next week. Hopefully we'll see you there. For Robbie, I'm John. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.